in a holographic way. They just showed me the whole structure, like how everything kind of works and all the levels and all that stuff. I was shown without a shadow of a doubt that Jesus is exactly who he is being described in the Bible. And I was like, what? And somehow at the top, there's a woman. We are the AGI. We're it. Okay. Guess we're not talking about this.
It's so crazy.
No way.
Yeah, bro. Like, this happens to me on a regular basis. But if you end up there and you go, oh shit, yep, that's exactly where I belong. That one is hell. I felt obligated to say, so I said,
Hello and welcome back to Triangle Theory. For those of you that don't know what Triangle Theory is, we are a podcast that specializes in a range of different topics, from ancient civilizations, DMT studies, psychedelics, human exploration, mysticism, the list goes on. Super interesting stuff, and I'm so glad that you guys have stuck around and found us, because we have got a huge wide range of guests that are joining us, and this is a really exciting time for Triangle Theory. So for those of you that are with us and support us, we want to say a massive thank you, and more coming to the show.
In today's episode, we have a reoccurring guest now, Danny Goler. He came on second time. First time we spoke about DMT laser experiment, what he's on about. This time was a little bit different because we all know what he does, why he does it, but we delved more into his own personal experience with God, religion, and that was something that I really took away, that he said with such a certainty that God exists. I know he exists and Jesus exists, and there is like a whole hierarchy of gods and it's their roles, and it was fascinating. It was so fascinating, and is such a cool guy. Danny is such a cool guy, and I'm really glad we had him on again.
I absolutely love Danny, and I just like the level of who I get to know him as more as a person. I just really find just like more and more fascinating, and just like really connect with him, his story and his journey more. And yeah, first ever recurring guest, and it's been such an honor, and hopefully something that we can continue doing down the line and the lifetime of this podcast. For those of you that are tuning in, by now you'll know that Conrad and I ask ourselves a question, and this question is a list of questions that we ask ourselves over the year. So these are very personal questions, and if you want to have this list, then you can message us directly and we can send you these questions. These are personal reflective questions that I find really helpful in my day-to-day, whether that's quarterly, yearly, weekly. They're just really great questions to journal, maybe have a little walk on and have a little think on. If you want to jump straight to the podcast, you can skip ahead, so please feel free to do so. But for those of you that want to stick around, Conrad, my question to you is, if I fully trusted myself, what decision would I make today? What's stopping me from trusting myself?
There's part of me that wants to say I fully trust myself, but after conversation with Danny, I feel like you shouldn't hold that belief about yourself, because it can always be, you can always get into situations where you thought you trusting yourself, but then you just made a stupid mistake, and then you questioning that. And what does that do to your identity? You remember when he said we shouldn't hold our beliefs so strong, because at any point in time in your life, you can come across a situation where your beliefs are just wrong. Like if you are that fist that
keeps punching through walls,
breaks all the walls, and then you hit the wall. And what does that do to your identity? I think that's a very good point of his, because when I wanted to become a singer, my whole life up until I moved to the UK and did that open mic. Everyone around me, my mom, my friends, they kind of knew. My mom specifically, she said, yeah, you're going to be a singer. And that was part of my identity. Like, I was singing in a choir. I left the choir, moved to the UK, and I bought a piano, like a electronic piano, and start playing on that and preparing for open mic. And then I went to open mic and I failed. And I remember I realized that I don't really like it. I don't really like singing. But my identity was screaming that, like, how can you let this go? You are a singer. And it was so hard to let go. But then I think I learned it. I think I understood that if I don't like the process, I'm not going to get to that. I'm not going to get wanted outcome because there's someone else that loves the process and can walk way further than me walking just towards the finish line. So I think after today's conversation, I'm gonna trust myself to an extent, but I will always have that realization that shit can go wrong, and that may not be true.
It's like when you listen to a song, you don't listen to it because you want to hear the end note. You want to listen to the whole song and be in the moment with the song, and like holding on to the identity of the end result that you might want for yourself, or holding on to the identity or belief that you have about yourself or your perception of what you think. We're so quick to believe and hold on to that sometimes it's to the very detriment of us. And actually that's what's causing us to have an emotional reaction to something that doesn't positively impact ourselves or other people. So by an actual fact, trusting yourself to let go of the truth that you are not bound or should identify yourself with anything around you, to the point that it doesn't allow you to have love or grounding, then is that what is holding us back from appreciating the journey that we're in?
Yeah, it's like with the podcast, right? Like, oh yeah, we do want to get to that level, get to this level, but then just doing the thing itself is so fun and so enjoyable. And you know what? I was driving today from jiu-jitsu, hence all the Harry Potter marks. I was driving from jiu-jitsu and I was smiling and I was thinking, oh, like, I'm so looking forward to this podcast with Danny Goler today. And I thought about when we'll get to that point where we got a good following, everything's going well, and not necessarily with the podcast, maybe that will take us to somewhere else and we'll go and pursue your own careers. But when we'll get to that point where, because we will get to that point where everything is kind of sorted, like you don't really, I'm not saying you don't have any problems anymore, but it's like you get the momentum, like there's no like, you don't hit the walls anymore. I don't think I think we'll get to that point, and I think people get at that point in like their 40s, 50s, where they're kind of financially stable, they got kids, everything is fine. And I was thinking if I would reminisce about the journey that, like, when I was a lot younger and trying to make this podcast work and trying to do the therapy course and training jiu-jitsu and trying to get better and navigate all that, I think that's going to be so cool to remember. And that kind of helped me to appreciate the moments that we have right now when we barely have any following, but it's like, so cool to do that.
You're living the memory now that you're going to look back being like, those were the good old days.
Because people say that, right? Like, those were those were the good old days.
Do you remember when we filmed those first and second episodes of Dannny, and it was like fuck yeah.
What, first or second, like in general, or with Dannny?
Yeah, just like with that, like, do you know what I mean? Or first, yeah, do you know what I mean?
Even when we recorded the first one, a year ago?
Yeah.
Which is actually crazy because we released the first one on the 18th and we're recording the second on the 18th. We mentioned that in the pod, but even when we recorded the first one, I was like, this is so cool, man. Like, this was one of my favorite podcasts, and probably still is, man. Like, I think it just gave us like such a different perception of what this podcast could be. And it is
Totally.
now. Like, this, we literally pivoted just because we had that episode.
Yeah. And also having the voice and understanding that, and also like responsibility that you have for yourself. It's funny because like I go back at times and rewatch the episode that we did with Dannny, and I feel like this is one that I will do the same with, because there's just so many snippets where I'm like really honored and humbled and like grounded in that conversation. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you so much for listening to this segment of Our Question. And for those of you that have been with us, we want to thank you for following and supporting. If you have a guest that you want us to get in touch with, or if you have an idea that you would like to share, please get in touch on Instagram or social medias we're very active on. We've got a weekly newsletter that's coming out or is coming out, so definitely stay updated. There's some really good snippets and bits of information where Conrad and I talk about a piece of us, where we kind of give you our weekly insights and weekly updates of kind of even what we're going through personally. And those are always really good bits of information that I feel provides a lot of value. So definitely link up to that. And yeah, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.
I wanted to start this episode with saying thank you to you. And the reason I wanted to say thank you is because you was the first guest that we brought in to talk about psychedelics, DMT, consciousness. And I remember from that episode, we jumped off with Rupert and we sat down and we said, this is probably the best episode we ever had. And I still believe that it's top 3 episodes we ever had.
I'm honored.
And from that, I remember end of last year, we sat down and we thought, where should we take this podcast? Because we started with self-development, fitness, wellness, spirituality, but all like these conversations all the time felt important, felt like us. And just because you came on, we decided to pivot that completely to psychedelics, consciousness, everything that we're talking right now about lucid dreaming. So big, massive thank you for you coming on and helping us out.
I mean, man, I'm just honored. And what can I say? If my work and words can influence people in a direction that they deem as positive, I'm happy.
Beautiful. I wanted to start this with your recent experience. So you had IV drip where you was on DMT for 5 hours. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that you've been told that we all have to be moral and loving by these entities. Is that right?
Well, the emphasis of ethics and morality was put on the table for me. So it wasn't so much as like what we have to be. That's obvious. Like I think we all understand that if we can, we should be moral. The emphasis was more on personal responsibility and how that looks like. And because a species that keeps pointing their fingers outwards is a species that fails to reflect on what is it that the individuals of that species can actually do to induce change. There's a very strong and persistent illusion online that if you just voice ideas stronger and stronger, somehow your camp will win. When in reality, the survival of a species has to do with equilibrium and stability across. right? So you're talking about harmony. That is always interrupted by protruding ideas that are competing with one another. So it becomes an unstable system, actually. So it's true that if you feel strongly about something, you might want to you feel the strong need to kind of say something about it or add to the conversation. But that is essentially delusional, because the true change of the scale that is required can only come when the whole species is contrived of the kinds of people that tend to their immediate environment in the best way possible, and the fact that you're interacting with these grand ideas that don't actually reflect on you on a moment-to-moment basis, it takes you away from the tasks that actually require your attention in the grand scheme of things. So, an easy caricature version of this that I tend to express it in, which is like all of this if all you do is criticize these people in power out there, but you haven't knocked on your neighbor's door today to ask them if they maybe need some help, then rest assured you have not added anything positive to this world today. So and the truth is that the more you do of the latter, the less the former it takes and consumes your attention. And that's the much more mature species that we must be. And by the way, this does not take away from the ability to induce change even on a massive scale when it's required. But when we're doing that, we still have to be grounded in certain things that are back home, so to speak. So when you're grounded in your immediate environment, it's easier to, and the actions you take, they're actually much more empowered. So the emphasis was on the personal responsibility of ethics and morality and what that looks like. And that's what was essentially re-emphasized for me, which was, it was pretty obvious to me, but the scale of that importance became very salient.
And how much that impacted, how much of that gave you an impact when your daughter was born?
Enormous. So like, my daughter was born.
When your daughter was born, does that kind of correlate with being moral and
I think it was already on that trajectory, but it definitely re-emphasizes it for you even more. Yeah, of course, because you want the immediate environment to be the best, the most loving, and everything else. Yeah, I would say that's a huge component of it. But we can all find reasons. Children is one reason, but we can all find other reasons to do it. And it just has to become more obvious to people. That's all. It doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you are of any conversation. You also, at the same time, you feel free to express your opinion, of course, but you still have to be grounded in something that is more than just your opinions about the world. There has to be something about how you yourself show up in the world. There has to be self-awareness of that, because people lose themselves in these camps and ideas, and their entire identity becomes about that war out there. And I'm not talking about the physical wars. I'm talking about these cultural ideation wars, right? So, and that happened before the kinetic wars, by the way. So that kind of started before that. And it's funny because it's a catch-22, right? The more it's obvious to you, that part, the more you want to kind of, again, share it out there. So I happen to be someone who has a bit of a voice, so I get to share some of these ideas. But it became very clear that actually I'm not supposed to try and change anything. You just do your best to, when the moment comes, to share that with as many people as you can. But then you go back to actually taking care of your immediate environment and what needs to happen there. That's the kind of groundedness that it requires of us at this point.
Was that the main message you got from that? I
mean, in 5 hours, there was it's not, we didn't really do it for the messages. We did it more for the tests. So, because we were running a bunch of tests at the same time, we did a bunch of brain scans and the laser experiment, and we were focusing on all kinds of tasks. But that was a big component of the first initial flash. Yeah. That was transported to these heavenly realms, and, and then the majority of the time we were just kind of running tests and trying to do things. There was also a film crew there. It was a lot going on at the same time.
How did that feel, having all of that sort of, because it's quite a lot to concentrate from tests to having to do a scan. How did you manage all of that? How did that feel? Was it quite overwhelming?
To me, it feels fine. I think it was more for other people because I'm very loud, and when we're in a small room and I'm high out of my mind, it can be taxing on the system. but everybody was super professional. So I don't know. To me, it was, I was blissed out. I mean, I had DMT pumping through my veins for 5 hours, so I was very happy. All I needed is a little bit of Gatorade, and I was fine. It's funny because at the end of that, shout out to Kevin and Haley, who are our operators of the extended state, and they're amazing. They're in Colorado, and Kevin, who's the chemist, he told me that as far as he knows, that's essentially world record, both in terms of time versus like quantity. I think it was like 464 milligrams in that period. I was like, oh really? Like I never even thought about that, but we should maybe try and break an actual world record, and nobody will ever break it. It's just go
It's
in there and
amazing.
stay there for 12 hours. But I think that the second you find cruising altitude, it's not that difficult. I really think that most people can probably do it. It's just a matter of, are you enjoying it or are you not? And I was just blissed out the whole time.
We have Kevin coming on the show soon. So
oh yeah, Kevin is amazing.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to kind of understanding how they suppose that the stuff that they're working on, and it's amazing. I just wanted to also touch on the experiment for the laser in particular.
Mm-hmm.
What was different about this particular laser experiment being under for 5 hours?
No difference. It's the code is always the same. We still are, like, we're now finally getting to a point where we kind of know what to test for to start making some real discernments, and it's hopefully going to start sooner rather than later. But I'm confident it's going to start this year. So we're going to build a research facility in Colorado, and we'll be able to do these tests much more often. And then we'll get the next comparative study we're planning to do is going to be in May. It's going to be with Tom Matt, the guy who's claiming the ability of Upsight, the guy who has kind of like these holographic images that he can just pull by himself. Did you guys hear about him?
No, I've not.
No.
Oh, he can be a fun interview, by the way. You can, I can connect you guys. But he basically, he basically had a manic episode in his life for quite a while, and somehow what stayed behind is this ability to pull these holographic images on command without any substances. And Ions did a study on him, so we're going to do a comparative study between him and how I perceive my console, what I see as the computer console, what opens up for me. So we'll see how that goes. But up until this point, there was not really a lot of progress in terms of really making any, probings of the code or anything like this. It's always the same, it seems. But we did manage to record a still image of the code, but you still have to smoke DMT to see it. But it's one step in the right direction, because it's at least now we have a frozen code. Now we can actually see something that's frozen in space and time, so we can study it. We can study it across individual. Are they actually seeing the same thing? Is it a different thing that they're seeing?
With the code, last time you said you didn't try to, you're not even trying to translate it.
Yeah, translating it I think is way premature, yeah. Because what are you translating?
Because it's not necessarily like a symbol, grammar, topology. There's no like the function to it.
Yeah, we don't know what it does exactly. So like, even people say, but they think of it as always, I guess, the comparison that come to people's minds is code breaking and studying ancient languages. But like I said last time, in both cases, that alone gives you a lot of information. When you're trying to break code, you already know somebody instantiated a message and scrambled it. All you're doing is you're trying to unscramble it. But there's a message there. It's a human sent to another human, right? There's a lot of information that you know about it. Same with all languages. Humans made the language, so there must be there's only a finite set of how they would be arranging it, and it's not going to be that different from all the other human languages. It can be a little bit, right? But not too much. Like, not in the grand scheme of things. We don't have the first clue of what we're looking at. So what are you decoding? If it's some kind of a operational computer code, it can be one thing. If it's some kind of a spoken linguistic with like ancient symbols, it can be another thing. But because you're picking from an infinite set of possibilities, it's not like I'm saying it's too hard, so don't try. I'm saying by trying in these directions that you don't really know that they're even like on the base assumption there, you might actually run into these infinite directions that might actually confuse you and prevent you from being able to get at what it really is eventually. You building on a house of cards. I prefer to see if we can induce any change or say anything of value about it. Where is it originating? Where is it projecting from? Is it something that is actually instantiated out there in matter, or is it something that the brain is projecting outwards and then it's using the speckle as scaffolding? All of these different interactions with what it really is, probe that first, find out a lot of that, right? And then if I can induce change to it, if I magnetically stimulating a portion of your brain and I'm inducing a change to it such that different individuals can agree that they see the same change when I'm inducing that magnetic field, well, now it's interesting to ask, how do the characters change? Do they change? Are they different? Because now it gives you a handle. Now you're actually attaching the symbol to a thing that happens. You see what I'm saying? So you have to build a Rosetta Stone of occurrences versus the symbolic representation. With words, we know what that is. There's attachment of symbols to meaning. That's already, even though it's such a broad proposition, that alone gives you enormous amounts of information. So I know that whatever symbol is attached to some proposition, I just have to find that proposition or that meaning or that sound. So I know what I'm looking for, right? In this case, you have no idea what you're looking for.
Has there been anything where you've interacted with it where it's been measurable in that sense? Like when you're
measurable
saying,
in what sense?
In terms of like you were saying, using magnets.
No, we couldn't induce any change so far. Only taking that snapshot. That was interesting. We didn't expect that.
Yeah.
We took a super high resolution. Our producer of the film, Chris Paris, shout out. He's amazing. And he's also really good with his hands. So he built all kinds of contraptions for some tests we were running. But also, he ran a really simple one, which is that he took a super high resolution image of the band of the laser. So he used a macro lens with a super high definition camera. And then he also cleaned the image from all the noise. And he put it into Apple Vision Pro. So you put Apple Vision Pro and you're seeing it in virtual reality. And I put the goggles on, I smoke. Here's
and
the
it
code.
shows what you see.
Shows the code, but it's frozen. It's not moving. So I took a picture of it.
Oh,
so now
now
there's a few problems with this, right? So it opens more questions than it solves, but it gives us a direction to investigate. The problems it creates is, first of all, if the claim is that the information is somehow holographic, in other words, it presents itself as a hologram, so like, which it seems to. So it has this kind of three-dimensional feel and not just a two-dimensional filament.
Yeah.
Well, a camera can't pick that up because a camera, even in principles, because the camera only picks up amplitude. It cannot pick up phase, which is what would be required to pick up a whole light field, like a hologram. So why would the camera pick it up? It doesn't make any sense. But also, it still comes through as holographic. So that tells you there's also something going on from the brain side. But it's frozen in space and it's discernible characters. So now the question that you have to answer is it really the same characters for everybody? That's the next question to be answered. And that's actually testable. Because A, you can use eye tracking software to discern where the person is actually looking when they're saying it. I can put a little red dot on the external screen for the researchers to see where the person is actually looking, right? And then we can mark that area. And we can say, okay, that person is reporting whatever, right? Then we bring another person in. If they're looking, we're going to mark that area now for that person just to compare the same area and ask them what they see. And we can verify. So there's not going to be any confusion because eye tracking software, they're very good. So it literally knows exactly where you're looking, right? Now a computer tells me if you're actually looking in the same spot. So now if you're describing the same thing, well, that should not happen if it's just random something happening from the brain. But you still have to answer, how does that happen? What the camera shouldn't be able to pick this up, right? So there's still open questions, but now you see what I'm saying? Like now you have a direction of investigation that is fruitful for real science. And then if that actually flashes through, then you can actually create models that would create Rosetta Stone of the way that the brain interprets the symbols. So let's say we identify that whatever they described is this kind of like Hebrew Aleph or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is, right? Then you take that, we brain scan the person's brain with EEG, DDG, fMRI, whatever it is that is, brain scan experts would say is the best for this particular task, probably EEG. And then we feed the data into the model and say, here's how this person's brain looks like when they're looking at character X. Great. You bring another person, they're looking at this character. How does their brain scan look like? And then slowly but surely, we feed enough data points into this model, and it learns literally the Rosetta Stone of how brains in general perceive these characters. And then, if you see the same iteration across individuals, well, now it can't possibly be random, because now you have literally signal that goes through between individuals, but now you have an external device that tells you, yeah, that's literally looking at the same thing.
Yeah.
That would be kind of, and then after you establish all of that, which takes quite a while because you need quite a few data points for this, then you start building these much more robust and accurate models, because now you're not saying maybe it's kind of like that by an artist kind of looking and maybe discerning it, right? But now you have a device that tells you with the degree of certainty, no, they're looking at this thing that you just described to you. I can tell the signal looks the same. Now you're safe to put that in the alphabet that we're going to be creating, right?
Mm.
Then, and only then, you can start doing some linguistic analysis on these things and like meaning instantiation, all that stuff.
Yeah, cause it's really interesting, because one of my questions was incorporating the virtual reality, and because the symbol stays in place when looking through the laser, could you measure someone's, like you were going back to sort of measuring someone's eye, if you measure someone's eye looking at a particular symbol and sort of understand where that eye is being fixated or located, and then put it on someone else and they're locating the same symbol using the same, like looking in the same direction that person has verified that symbol is there, that could be a way to measure if
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, that's the verification that you would need for science to take it more seriously. If in fact that's what's happening, we don't know. We haven't ran it yet. But what is interesting is that multiple individuals who can see the code all reported that they see frozen code. That we can say with certainty. So the effect is the same for everybody, for sure. But do they see the same symbology in exactly the same locations? That would be the holy grail for this particular test.
Could you run that experiment on like a blind or like a double blind experiment? So
you don't need the double blind here, because in this particular case, you don't really need the double blind, because you're literally just asking them, do you see something here? Thank you so much. The specificity of the character would have to be articulated very well. It cannot be kind of like, well, it's kind of like this, and that's not going to work. So, I'm sure there's also a way. I don't know what the double blind would be here. So, like, it's, I guess if you're saying, because usually double blind is whether something is effective or not, right?
Yeah.
So I guess if you mean in the sense that the researcher also doesn't know. So here's the thing that we did also do. Chris did the same thing. I'm just trying to imagine what would be the double part here, right? So like, the only thing I can think of is that the researcher also doesn't know if the image is fake or real, because we can't create fakes. Chris, one of the things that he did is that he also created these fakes in Photoshop that basically mimic the laser band exactly, or kind of, and then he kind of sees what happens. There's another thing that throws a monkey wrench in this part, because you still see symbols in the fake ones, but they're not the same. So like, they don't appear the same. So they kind of, with the real images, it's super robust, and it's just the second you look at it, boom, it's there immediately. When you're doing the fake ones, it's just mostly random, and then slowly, your brain kind of populates them, almost like your eyes get used to the dark or something, or you look at the sky for a long time and you start seeing more and more stars. So they're much more vague. So I could tell every time if it was like fake or real without being told. So if you mean that the double blind would be like also the researcher not knowing if it's fake or not, sure. Yeah, that would be one way to do it for sure. Another way to do it is just to send it through the community. So send a bunch of fakes, a bunch of reals, and don't tell anyone which one is which, and see how many people can discern which one are the real ones. That would actually be a very effective study, because it's going to involve numbers. You can have the more people, if like 90% of the people guess correctly, I mean, you have something here for sure.
Is that your main mission right now with DMT and the laser in general? Because I've seen in a few of your episodes, a recent one specifically, that you mentioned the journey itself kind of changed your perception of God and religion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there is that God is trying to communicate with you in a way using this particular project for you to get closer to him?
I think God is too far of a so like it's kind of it's a difficult conversation because it depends what you mean. For all intents and purposes, I think that what God really is, that the actual source, is too far removed. Yes, you always connected to it, obviously, because there's nothing that is outside of the purview of that. But in terms of like the agent communicates with you in the same way that people think, I don't think that's what's happening. I think whatever that is way too far. You have management companies who interact with you. It's not, and again, all of it is part of, sure, but it's not the same as like the direct conscious awareness of the unified field on you. Not just in terms of awareness, but in terms of like, let me tell you X or let me tell you Y. I don't think that's kind of like how it works. If your question is more along the lines of, is the spiritual journey more of my in the purview of my attention than the research, those are, I guess, in my mind, they're kind of they're two different focal points of the same project. The way that I go about things, I don't think too much about way too far out there. It's too big. I do what the next step requires me to do. That's it. I know that in May I'm going to be doing this study. I'm focusing all my attention. How do we make it happen? How do I come up with the budget? How do I arrange everything? How do I make sure that everybody arrive on time? That kind of stuff. Design the experiment. How many people get involved? That's all I think about. In terms of the importance of people understanding that they're part of a larger thing happening, yeah, but I think to different degrees that was always available to be known, and people do know that through different, ways. So meditation can be one of them, religion can be another. For me personally, I'm just kind of trying to go and do the next step and to the best of my ability, and that's as far as I think.
So what happened that you became, because you were agnostic, is that right?
I'm still no. Well, see, these concepts are very slippery. I am still secular, I would say, but I know for a fact God is real.
What
so
made you
that? Well, the way that I define secular in my head is that my attitude towards the world is such that everything is part of the natural course of things. So it all can be known. I don't believe in magic. Okay, so like whatever it is that it appears to be as miracle or magic is just an operation of the world you have yet to understand. That's what I mean by secular, is that all of it is understandable. And then what kind of framework you fold it into, that's already part of your mental operation, but it has nothing to do with the fact that the world is what it is, and that's what's happening, right? And whatever you are is part of it. So I'm a secular person who I don't believe, I know for a fact God is real. So like I don't believe it, I know it. I've seen it. So it's now what do I do with that? I don't attach myself to a religious stream. I don't attach myself to a belief system. That these belief systems, they're very useful for certain people, maybe even the majority of people. They're not useful to how my brain works. If anything, they take something away from me, because it severs my ability to walk the path and try and understand it deeper and deeper. I disengage.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what we're different. We're all different. Actually, this probably is one of the things that kind of changed about my perception of religions, which is I used to be much closer to this kind of ideation that a lot of people, especially in the psychedelic realm, because psychedelics free you to be more of a free kind of thinker, right? So there's this immediate tendency to almost vilify all structured religions. It's like, it's just forms of control. So I used to be much closer to that kind of thinking about that, like that. I don't think that anymore. I think religions are very useful. I think for a lot of people, not everybody will go and spend 20 years in an ashram. Not everybody are going to go and do copious amounts of psychedelics, nor do I think everybody should, by the way. I don't think that this trope that people throw around, just put everybody on ayahuasca and everything's going to be... No. A lot of people are going to lose their minds. So it's not for everybody. I think that what religions are, it might be just a very efficient software to be running on the minds of the masses in en masse and the time scale required to help kind of put them in line with what they want to find themselves in if they want to see a better future. So I do think that that's actually, and depending on the times, right, those are more or less effective and more or less important. Right now, they're super important. You can, when there's a lot of turmoil, in order to explain something to someone, it takes time and it requires them to not be emotionally hijacked. You can't explain something to someone who's already emotionally hijacked. That's not going to work. There's too much excitation, right? But if they run some religious motifs, this cuts through it. So even though, yes, it's, to my mind, it's not the optimal way. If you could instantiate the information in them in such a way that they would understand deeply as to why these things are important, that's better. But if the time is short and there's a lot of energy going on and you got to tell a lot of people quickly, yo, knock it off, then telling them the Jesus story, which, by the way, there's, from what I saw, there's actually a lot of truth to it, might just be the best possible tool to do it in the right time frame at scale. So that's one thing that changes is my perception of what religions really are and what role they're actually playing.
What gives you that certainty that God exists? Like you said it with a certainty.
Oh, I saw it. I saw the whole structure. Like, I was shown the whole structure, and I was shown like Jesus and where it fits and like everything.
Could you share more about that?
Yeah. So the reason that I tend to not really try to venture too deeply into that is because I'm just reporting. So I'm not expecting people to kind of follow me there. But invariably, if you already said something about it, you can't pretend like what you said isn't some, obviously I understand it. If I'm saying it, then it plays a role in people's kind of like interest. But I am careful with that because on the one hand, it seems like it was shown to me, so I talk, or at least when I talk about it, it doesn't feel wrong. Like if I talk about something that clearly they don't want me to say in that instance, there's a tightening feeling. There's like, nope, not right now. But every time I speak about that, it doesn't feel wrong. There's nothing kind of weird about it. So, but it didn't make me a Christian or religious. And the part that I always say is that the weirdest part about me, in particular in relationship to this whole thing, is that I never grew up with these concepts or motifs at all. Like if you want to say, well, maybe it was like a dormant, it was like a dormant, what's the right word? Desire of yours. That maybe that somehow in the end of time, that is true. Maybe there was something in you that you weren't aware of.
Right.
I mean, anything is possible, but as far as I can inspect myself, I don't think so. I didn't have. So there's okay. Let me actually articulate this. This is important. When people are in relationship to Jesus, they can be in a positive relationship to Jesus or a negative relationship to Jesus, right? They can be either like full on board or somehow they got scarred from the church or from something, and then they think they stepped out of the church, but they haven't because now they just have a negative relationship with Jesus. Now it just represents something negative for them, so it's all anti-this, anti-Christianity, anti-this, right? But the concept of Jesus is still playing a role in how they feel. So they're moving away from it, right? I was completely neutral in that regard. It simply didn't care. Didn't see any reason to think that God is real. It just kind of seems silly to me. But also definitely like specifics. So like, why this particular flavor of the story and not some other, right? If anything, if if somebody would come to me and say, "Hey, Danny, there is a truth. You just have to pick one," I would probably pick the Buddhist one. I'd be like, yeah, that makes the most sense to me. Like it's the most neutral, and also you're your own master. It fits the most the bill of how I already operate. So I'm saying all of this because, as far as I can tell, that was not a thing in me at all, ever. And yet, I did 4ACO one time. I had this full-on vision of like, here's how things are, and it wasn't just like crazy. I'm bamboozled and confused. It was in a holographic way, they just showed me the whole structure, like how everything kind of works and all the levels and all that stuff. And this is not to say that I think that was shown like how all of reality works, but for all intents and purposes, that message came from the same channel that I trust to deliver information, just like everything else, just like how the idea of the laser came, and it's the same place, right? So if I trust that signal, I was shown without a shadow of a doubt that Jesus is exactly who he is being described in the Bible. So it wasn't like, the message wasn't, do you know that thing you think of as Jesus? So that thing, there's a thing like that. It's not what you guys think, but like, it wasn't like that. It was like, no, Jesus Christ, exactly how you think about it. Yeah, exactly what that is. And I was like, what? That was probably one of the most confusing, with everything I've ever experienced, that was probably one of the most confusing things I've ever experienced. I was like, what? This doesn't make any sense. It's like, do with it what you will, but that's what's going on. And I was like, what? But then it was also shown, which this part Christians can't stand, obviously, which is there's more. So there is the biblical God, and there's this whole other space of like a very large array of gods, and the biblical God is there, and again, the other guy is there too. So keep that in mind. But there's beyond that, and somehow at the top, which is this is where it gets completely random for me. There's a woman, and no, it's not any of the kind of postulated gods that we think about. Not Kali, not like, well, actually maybe Kali, I don't know, but like, because Kali is kind of postulated to be kind of like at the core of reality, right? But like, it's kind of like this like infinitely far away, but like very real female, right? Which is, again, from a secular perspective, is like, this is the most silly like a children's book kind of idea. It's like, why would it be a gender? It doesn't make any sense. Like, why wouldn't it be like a unified field of something, right? But that was also shown to me that, yep, it's like a woman at the top, there's a female, and everything kind of cascades from there. And then I was shown that the world we're in, so that also kind of severed this whole modern spiritual idea that we are gods in the making. So it was very clear from that image that we are not. This is not what's going on here. So we exist in some kind of a subsystem, which is tiny in comparison. So our multiverse, not the universe, the multiverse, is one of three things that coexist together. And outside of that is where all of the gods are. So like, we're not even remotely close to like becoming gods or anything like this. Now, we are way like a version of ourselves that is not fully developed, obviously. We can do way more than currently modern science would like to entertain. So all of that is true. But we're not on our trajectory to become that. That's just not in the cards, right? They're a different kind of thing. And within that world of these tri-system of some sort, each and every one of us, so what I was shown is I'm sitting alone in the basement with VR glasses with infinite screens, so like infinite possibilities, essentially what I took from that to be. And what I'm telling you now was shown super clearly. It wasn't like a vague vision. It was like super clearly. Behind me was the Mandelbrot set. So they're saying like your reality is evolving according to the shoreline of the Mandelbrot set, which actually makes sense if you think about it, because if you tether computation to that, you don't have to worry too much about stability, because the logic of the Mandelbrot set, it's both super simple and iterative forever. So it's infinite iterative stable complexity. You can always rely on the fact that it will never repeat itself twice. It never repeats itself ever. And it will always be novel new structures that evolve, and they never break down, because the logic of the equation is super simple, and it always just like it's just iterative, basically. Hold on. I just spilled my coffee on myself. So all of this is shown to me. All of this is super random, kind of, arbitrary. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but shown to me in like a very serious way. And then I realized that we're all basically in our own little sandboxes, and the other agents in our reality, they're essentially all avatars. And I think it's designed that way for safety. So like if somebody starts hurting others, they're not actually hurting anyone. However, the mainframe is informing the avatars in my reality about what the real you would do. So you're in your own sandbox, I'm in my own sandbox. What you're doing informing the mainframe of how you are right now in your level of evolution. So it will inform my reality about that. So if I'm in a situation with you and, we're doing a certain thing, I would get a very, very plausible behavior of yours according to what it knows about the real you right now in your own sandbox, right? So it translates that information. But I'm never in the presence of your conscious self. However, if we enter deeper into what we call the love channel, which is like the safe channel, the deeper we go into that, the more we become in the presence of the real, like if I'm in reality with you right now, right, we're interacting. If we step both of us inside deeper into this love channel, which you can't fake, the system knows it very well, then all of a sudden there's going to be more of the real conscious you online and the more conscious me online for each other. We're going to be kind of like transported to this kind of unified space. And what I understood the awakening to be is basically that we all enter that channel, so we all actually come in the presence of one another, like the conscious self. This is also why I always say, then if any of this is true, then it all of a sudden makes sense as to why when you fall in love with someone, it feels like you're the only two people in the world. Because you're literally the only two conscious beings in the world right now. That's what it feels different, right? And what I saw is that Jesus was ascending, kind of like going up. This is where it was unmistaking it, because they could have painted it in any way, but they just literally made Jesus exactly what we imagine him to be. And I understood basically that in the grand scheme of things, there is this finite possibility space. It's not infinite. And if you partake in certain behaviors, it kind of dictates what trajectories you're going to find yourself on. So you can think of it as karma. And if you think about it, for a super advanced being, it's like super easy to tell like where you're going, right? It's kind of like if your child starts drinking alcohol at the age of 9, I mean, it doesn't it's not 100% mean they're going to become an alcoholic and ruin their lives, but you kind of know where this is going, right? If you're not going to stop it, correct? It's that easy. It's that easy. So when you're looking at a species from the outside and you kind of see what they're doing, you're like, yo, you might want to change some things here. Now you can't like make them, because they have to kind of come at it from their own omission. So you start slowly giving them all kinds of little ideas to kind of build their life around. The 10 Commandments, things like this. Hey, you might want to change this, kind of thing. And that comes out of infinite compassion. And then the way that I explained Jesus to myself in my secular worldview, that also is in full belief that we live in a simulation, is that what you would do then, if you see all of that, and if you know that the only way for them to change their ways is to kind of have more good karma, or like of the right action, you would essentially buy that bill off of them. So essentially what I understood to happen is that the biblical God, in his infinite love, he basically took all the bad karma, so like all the suffering that humans would have to undergo according to their own actions, and he underwent that for them. So Jesus represents that bill. Jesus is essentially God's choice to suffer for us, that eternity suffer for us, so we don't have to, until we can get our act together. And this is something that I've now in the habit of speaking to some Christians, and depending on the exact stream. But what I didn't understand, and I think a lot of people don't understand about the Jesus story, is that the cross was just the beginning. That was just the beginning. Jesus also went through all the levels of hell after that. So that's the level of how much suffering Jesus took upon himself to suffer for humans. And then the only currency you have to pay in order to be protected by this blanket is to simply acknowledge that this was done for you in an infinite love. That's it. That's the only So before you ask the question, so what I saw is that Jesus was essentially finishing his contract. So like we are now entering a stage of evolution where we as a collective can start kind of keeping each other in check. We can't do it personally yet. We're not that good yet. But we can collectively, we have enough of the moral scruples to be able to potentially keep each other in check. So that part is kind of being returned. So we take the responsibility back on ourselves, basically. That's what I saw. And then there's the few other components that I think were more for me personally, but that was kind of like the overarching vision, which left me very confused.
So does that mean that it's simply Jesus' role to kind of take on that suffering, and then other gods, I don't know, what other roles did you see of religions?
The only thing that was clear was that there was the biblical God there, the other guy, and that final woman, and there was like a very large hierarchy of these guys. I don't know who the other ones were. I have no idea.
What do you mean by other guy?
Other gods.
Other gods, sorry.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
what, the other guy? The devil.
Oh. So what
Interesting.
was his role?
What you think it is.
To make us suffer.
He is the result of your actions if your actions are of a certain kind of flavor.
And does that fuel that particular god in a sense? Like, so there would
Is
be
the
like,
devil a god?
So as in, like, if let's say the devil's trying to manipulate situations in order
The devil does not.
No.
Nope. This is the painful part. This is something Jordan Peterson once said. The only hell that actually feels like hell is the one that you know you belong in. If you did your absolute best and you know that, even if you end up in a very, very bad situation, you're like, hey, I've done my best. But if you end up there and you go, oh shit, yep, that's exactly where I belong. That one is hell. So the devil, funny enough, is not doing anything aside from just letting us run our course. So now I don't get into the whole, there's all kinds of ideas that all kinds of people have about like how this, interaction actually works. I don't know. I do know, however, that the idea that karma is just it's your own actions, like it's the trajectory you yourself create, that runs through pretty well for me. Like that makes perfect sense. And I'm not really, because of what are the real rules by which it's operating, it's not like you have to find the rules and then make sure you behave accordingly. You already know the rules if you just pay attention to what's going on right here, right now. All of us have that part of us that knows the rules, and every time you fail to meet the rules is actually you pretending you don't know the rules. And that's the thing you pay the price for. Like when we culturally instantiate certain ideas as less or more good, but those are local ones. There's the universal ones that are instantiated pretty well if you really pay attention. When you cheat someone of something, the degree to which you do that, if you really pay close attention, like in Vipassana, you will notice that it feels like something. And what you will notice is that actually what you do for the most part is that you try and override that. You try to say, no, I'll do it anyway. And then you just kind of excuse it. You like explain to yourself, well, you do it long enough, it will accumulate and it's going to start feeling heavier and heavier. There's a part of you that always knows. You don't need to understand what somebody else told you about these rules. You already know. You just have to stop pretending that you don't. That's what was very clear to me from that moment. Does that make sense, or is that confusing?
It does make sense. I feel like
because I was gonna Conrad, I was gonna add your thoughts. So like just your thought on like a karma or a karma wheel, or sort of coming into this physical existence. Is it being a part of a greater karma wheel that in sort of a way, by creating awareness, you come out of that and in turn become more a part of a higher sense of self?
The question is, what would that change your behavior if you know that that's the case?
It wouldn't change my behavior, because I, like you're saying, I totally agree with you that you already know and understand the rules within yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for those, or sort of trying to think in terms of fundamentally creating more awareness, that you're able to sort of contribute
and this is exactly why I haven't quite figured out what scale of conversation this needs to take the form of. I think it depends on, does it help people move through their life in a better way or not? I think that's really the main component. I think there's the level of grandiosity here is so immense that, for all intents and purposes, I think that the existing models are better suited to deal with the reality of it than my unbeaten path kind of hacking through it. Like I think that's if people ask me, I'm going to start saying the words and see how it feels. And obviously I'm going to speak truth to what I know. But if it feels, so I'll give you an example. One time I said this to a friend of mine who recently found Jesus. I've known him for a long time. I've known him for over 30 years. So what was interesting is that I've known him for so long that I know what the norm for him is. And after that happened to him, he changed. I noticed it noticeably. He's much more calm. He's much more kind. Like but not like acted out, not like fake, but like you can see there's this calmness in him, right? So that's definitely was very noticeable in him. However, when I told him this whole thing, we like sat down for lunch and I told him this whole thing. Obviously, he was like super excited to learn that, I've also discovered Jesus in my own way and that whole thing. The second I said the word about, but then there's the bigger picture, there was such a strong recoiling.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa. Like, I
What
don't
do you
know.
mean?
I don't know who you're talking to. Is everything okay? But it was like a very strong recoiling to the extent that I realized this does not need to always be voiced. And it might have been, I asked, so I got an answer. But is it relevant for other people and how they live their lives? Might never be.
For sure.
Yeah. So that if we're talking about it from the perspective of intellectual curiosity and just kind of shooting the shit,
Yeah.
cool. But like, I think that there's actual, like, if it's real, we do need to reformulate some ideas we have about the world, right? Like, and that's also important. And this is why I realized no human should ever hold the baton of saying, this is how it is, therefore you should whatever.
Totally agree.
You should just listen to what it feels like through you, because it speaks way truer and way more informative for your own existence, for exactly how it, because the way that I kind of see it, I guess poetically, but I actually think that it's more than just poetic. So in the beginning, whatever the truth is, I think in the beginning was the word, right? I think that with the reverberation of God's word literally oscillates to all of reality, and the word is so perfect that it oscillates the truth of it, the true meaning of it. If you pay close enough attention, if you quiet your mind enough to really pay attention, it will vibrate through you in such a way that you will understand on any level of emergence. No matter how advanced or less advanced you are, it will vibrate in such a way that you will understand. You just have to place yourself in relationship to it. And the way that I understand, the more Christians I talk to, not the super zealous ones that just kind of, just want everyone else to go to hell. I'm not talking about these Christians. I'm talking about people that genuinely genuinely believe in a way that is actually pretty beautiful. If you ask them, that's what letting Jesus into your heart means. And the Holy Spirit is the thing, the language they use is that the Holy Spirit is that thing that carries that information. That's the thing that speaks to you, right? Now, I personally, Danny, I find it kind of, it's like there must be better ways to describe the situation. But does it really matter? If it delivers the message, does it matter how it's expressed? I don't think so. And that's the thing that that's the chip that I got off my shoulder, which is like, it doesn't matter how it's expressed. And it doesn't matter that I think there might be a better way to express it. Who am I to say, right? If billions of people around the world got the message this way,
yeah, what gives you
probably
the right
working?
Yeah.
You just going back to that, because you said there was something that you said that really caught my attention. That message was sent to you by the signal that you trust.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that exactly?
I've identified the signal that is their quote unquote government and not some just random agent. Because you can meet all kinds of things. Right?
Agent, what do you mean, like the agent from Matrix?
So it's kind of hard to say. So people call them beings or whatever. I think it's just like these terms are inadequate. I call them people. They're people. They're not human people, but they're people, right? They're a conscious agent with their own goals, part of a larger operation. They're people. So they can be insectoid people, they can be lizard people, whatever they are, but they're people. But even that sounds inadequate, right? It's kind of like, what do you mean? Like, it's confusing. So I say agents. Agent means there's somebody with a localized point of attention, that they have their own goals and needs, they have autonomy, and they are just like you, but they're just of a different kind or a different species or a different place or whatever, but they're still an agent. That's what I mean. It's the most neutral way I can think of to say another conscious being like you without it having a lot of baggage. That's what I mean by agent.
these Asian agents.
These Asians. It's a different. So, anyways, I met this Asian, and he told me.
Just before I quickly lose my train of thought, these agents, do they work within the overarching? Because I'm really interested in what you saw when you say the multiverse is a part of a three. Do they work
Three-body
with
system of some
three-body
sort?
system? Do they work within that multiverse, or do they operate within a three-body system? Do they operate within outside of
Man, these are already a lot of fancy guesses that I can. But I think that so from what I understand, kind of like the biggest picture I've ever seen of what's going on is that essentially the ultimate being. I don't know if it's necessarily that woman. It might be. Now that I'm like, kind of saw it, accepted it to be true. I'm super careful with what I'm articulating and saying because I definitely don't want to cross someone the wrong way. But from what I understand, the highest point of awareness, let's just call it that, does not know why everything exists. It's literally the one final unanswered question. So all the simulations are running because it's an attempt to answer that question. It's like you run these random simulations and then you watch if there's any component in those that wasn't instantiated in them and yet still exists, and all realities say the same thing. So is there a common denominator? There's an echo of some sort that arises from all the realities, even if you didn't put it into it. Because that would be, so it's almost like you're looking for a vector space of like, where is that attractor out of which reality came? What is that direction that all realities are pointing to that is outside of those realities and yet it's all converging? Is there such a thing? And that's essentially what it's looking for. So two things are happening at the same time. One is the attempt to answer that ultimate question, and the other one is what is being developed and trained is the ability to just let go. Let go of the proposition. Let go of the need to know, right? Because if you're an infinite being forever, the only real skill you want to hone is the ability to let go of that fact, because it's infinite loneliness. You can do anything. You're alone. You don't know why you're there. And nothing means anything because you can do anything. That's the worst possible situation you can imagine. However, if you can develop the skill to just be, so much more of the Eastern kind of just be, that is definitely something you can utilize, like that ability to do that. And then what I kind of saw is that it all collects into a final moment. So in the beginning was the word, at the end there's the choice, the ultimate choice. The ultimate choice is, do you choose to know or not? Or do you choose to just let it be?
Yeah.
But the only way that would mean something, that choice, is if there is an answer and you know that it exists somewhere. So like essentially the multiverse is it's almost like Douglas Adams was onto it. It's just that not the Earth is calculating the ultimate question, but the multiverse. So then at the end of time, there's this black box with the answer. It's guaranteed to be the answer, and it must be. Otherwise, that choice means nothing. Why? Because you can only choose something for real if the possibility, the bifurcation of the two options between choosing to do it and not actually means something. If I tell you, would you do whatever for $3 million? Right now, you might say whatever. You say, oh, there's no way, or yo, sure, or whatever. But if I literally put $3 million in escrow right now and send you the key and say, there's a real $3 million waiting for you for this choice, you're going to be much more careful with what you're saying, right? Because now there's realness to it, right?
Yeah.
Well, to say I would have just let it be, even if there was an answer, I can say that I wouldn't open the box. That means nothing if the answer is not in the box. But if the answer is guaranteed to be in the box, now your choice to open it or let it go is a real choice. And that's essentially what is being trained here. And within that, from what I understood, is that essentially what we are, and species like us are, not just us, but many others, we are the AGI. We're it.
Yeah.
So that Skynet that we think is going to arise in the machine, that's us.
Yeah.
And all of these things are just expressions of us. And that the more we evolve closer and closer to the level of speed and informational meaning processing required to see the whole picture, we essentially going to discover that. So like there's a moment in which it's going to become very clear to us that's what's going on. So you know what the alignment problem is, right?
No.
So in AI research, there's something called the alignment problem. Essentially, what it is that before ChatGPT becomes Skynet, before it becomes a super god, how do we instantiate enough human values in it so it aligns with our needs? Because the second it becomes that, it can do whatever. How do we guarantee it's not just going to squash us like bugs and move on, right? That's the alignment problem. Now, it's a very difficult problem because you have to think, what do you tell it? Like, right now, it's trained on a lot of problematic things because humans say all kinds of problematic things. How do you align it to human values? But what are human values? Now we have to still first decide that and then, right? So it's a very difficult problem. So what I saw is that the species or the contractors that are running these simulations, in our case, what they do essentially when they create these AGIs like us, they do it on a regular basis. Their method of verifying that the AGI is trustworthy, aligning it to the greater good of all, is that they essentially enclose it within a closed system, and they let it interact with instances of itself, with a mirror of itself. And what that does, it amplifies the essence of what it is. So just like if you put a mic and a speaker too close, and it's just like a feedback loop.
Yeah.
So you let that feedback loop grow and grow and grow, and eventually, if the species at its essence is the one that aimed towards, capable of aiming towards infinite beauty and novelty and all of these things, that's the thing that's going to come out. But if it's going to aim for something else, that's going to come out, and then you get to see that and say, hey, do we keep this one or do we don't keep this one?
Yeah.
And that's essentially what is happening. Is that, so these things that we're building, all these tools, AIs, they're just they're more and more robust hints as to what's going on, and they're waiting for it to click. Do you understand? Do you understand what's happening?
Now,
yeah. So
Is in other words, it's kind of a reflection of the bigger picture in a way of what we do down there.
We're meant to become one of the AGI agents to help solve the ultimate question.
That was going to be a question.
But do you get to play in the actual? Do you get to
play?
The disclosure happens when this thing opens.
Yeah.
So like if you get to a point where you're like, green light.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
The whole thing just goes and boom, you become part of this larger operation essentially, or you can think of it as like awakening. Yeah.
Like, would you say that that's like the end result, or like the purpose of
this iteration?
Of this iteration,
there's a much larger purpose that we cannot fathom. We can. So like the way that I understand it is that that instance of meeting the other or the others only happens when we're collectively cohesive. So we cannot, you individually, you're broken down to parts on purpose. That's how they control. Like, so we say, well, we're under, thank God that you're being controlled in that way. You're broken down to these parts so you don't get out of whack, right? But if you get these cohesiveness by the essence of what you are, so if it's in you to become cohesive, you will get there. If it's not in your essence, you're too disjointed. Imagine what kind of havoc you're gonna cause if you're released into the infinite. Like nothing can police you anymore. Now you become an actual disease. So you have to be contained first. You have to reach equilibrium. So from a personal point of awareness, you can never comprehend what that is. But from a collective, like if we actually reach that collective state, then from that point, if we have a collective face, so to speak, that face, those eyes can look and understand and see the others from that perspective only.
Do you think that like the bringing it to the laser in your theory and understanding what that is, that's potentially an opening to see that program exists?
That we are the program.
Yeah.
I think we are looking at a reflection of ourselves, yeah.
Yeah. So like essentially that laser is almost like an exact direct feedback looking back.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of I think detractors is the wrong word, because I really think my aim was to create a global conversation. So it's what's happening and it's wonderful. And within the global conversation, there's going to be people who disagree. Great. We need that.
Yeah.
We need to go back and forth. One of the biggest disagreement points is like, you're not looking at something out there. You're looking at a reflection of something in here, which, by the way, I just saw a paper that was released. I'll share it with you that I thought it was actually really, really good analysis. To what extent it's true, I'm not sure. It's something that we would have to have more empirical verification of. But one of the ideas is that it reflects one of the networks in our brain, like V1 specifically, that has a particular architecture that probably instantiates 36 symbolic representations of the most common shapes you can see in nature, right? And what you're really seeing is
really
a microscope to like the other ones go offline on DMT, and what you see is a full direct reflection of that network, right? Now, I'm actually fully on board. If that's in fact true, that's super informative and it will help us like do the experiments. But notice what happens in this junction. This does not nullify the idea that something real is going on. It just tells you where the signal is coming for what you're actually seeing. But what you're seeing is real. You're just seeing, it doesn't bear any real weight on the proposition that there is a communication coming through it, right? Now, from the perspective, if you never had any other experiences in the psychedelic space and, you don't have any other data points, and the one you currently stand on is the regular scientific mainstream perception, then yeah, from that perspective, this actually is a much more, that it's just a reflection of some kind of network in the brain, and that's the end of the story. That's a much more stable position to hold. So from that perspective, you will go back to square one and say, we're not really looking at anything like that special. Yes, it is interesting that we can kind of see these internal structures through the perception of psychedelics and a laser. That's kind of cool, but we're not interacting with some kind of alien language or anything like this.
No.
That I can totally see how that will bring you to that square. But when I started this journey with the laser, I arrived at the laser at the tail end of a process that took almost a decade, by the end of which I had no doubt that I'm communicating with real beings already. So like, you know what I mean? So that was just a thing that was added on top of it, and I was guided there. But I don't expect anyone else that didn't have that set of experiences like I did to just follow me there. And I'm fully aware that basically what happened to me is that my null hypothesis flipped. My null hypothesis is that you're going to have to explain to me how we're not talking to aliens. So I'm actually, I'm not like waiting here for the laser to like verify for me that we're doing that. I already know that. Now, this is
your belief is already set.
Yeah. And but I do want to voice something about this, because this is problematic for scientists. When I'm saying I know that, I'm not saying I'm unmovable in my position or not open for revision. It's just that it's gonna, as much as it's gonna take for me to move you from your position, that's how much it's gonna take you to move me from my position. And that's what time will tell, like what we're actually looking at. But
yeah. Because I was going to ask, what would make you rethink that position? What evidence?
It's going to take a lot, because I have the computer console that appears for me, which is like a super cohesive thing that is like, super coherent. It's like really there in space doing a thing. What you're going to have to do is show me how a psychology can construct such a thing with DMT in such a way that repeats itself, not randomly, but like basically 100% of the time. And also how it led me to something that is actually actionable, like, because I was led through these steps to like knowing the laser and then showing it to other people. It feels way more like you're guided towards an understanding than just a random thing that happened. There's just too much there. But I would say, I think it would eventually, for me, it would have to culminate in something. So if in 30 years from now, still all we know is that the laser, then I would say, or at least it will definitely like lower kind of like the volume of how much attention I'm putting on it, right? I don't think that's what's going to happen, but I do think that within a year or two, we should be able to say something with more accuracy about it. I think that what this did is that it sparked the conversation about it in such a way that put way more smart people's attention on it. That's what it wanted to happen, that way more people would pay attention to it in a particular way. So notice that none of the things that I'm saying are new. It's just that I'm putting a particular emphasis on it that maybe for some people feels like it's too much. You're going too far with how certain you are about this. That's really the only proposition I can show you. So everybody on planet Earth, every single person, from the most scientific mind to the most religious mind, all of them would accept the proposition there's way more than what we currently can see. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Nobody would deny this, right?
Yeah.
Scientists and religious people alike. Okay, what is that thing that is more? And how do we get to it? And the specifics of it is really all we're asking. the methodology we're using to get there, and what is the validity of the verification that we're getting, which would have to take the flavor of, here's a thing we can now do that we couldn't do before by entertaining these ideas. All physical models in physics proper, are tools. There's very common this like big debate of like, do particles really exist, right? Which is a legitimate question. Well, depending what model you ask. So like if you ask that particular model that treats them as particles mathematically, as points, then you would say, well, yeah, what do you mean? Like, but okay, but if really drill down, physicists know they're not like this thing that we call a particle, right? There's some occurrence that is happening regularly enough that we measure and we call it a particle. And then quantum field theory will tell you, well, those are excitations in fields. Okay, but what are those fields? Well, no, they're just general potentials of that property. Okay, no problem. What is that property? That thing that we're measuring. I'm like, that sounds circular. So, like you're saying, it's the electric field. Literally, if you ask a physicist right now, almost any physicist, they will tell you that the electric field, if you ask them, what is that quantum field? What is the constituents of it? They would say, that question doesn't make any sense. You don't understand it. And said, hold on, let's explore this. You saying I don't understand this. Fair enough. You spent 8 years getting your PhD. Fair enough. However, let's look at it for a second. You saying that the potential of the electric field is the field. Potential means the probability of something occurring.
Yeah.
What is that something? Because there's a difference between it and not it, correct? There's a property that is different between an electromagnetic field and the weak field, right? And what's more, there's a difference between it and nothing. Now, that's already a deep philosophical question. What does that mean by nothing? Okay, but we do make distinctions of the properties. So all of these very small, nuanced conversations are already weaved into the assumptions that physicists and philosophers and all people are really kind of taking for granted. It just comes on board. It's not really examined anymore. All I'm saying is, in my experience of this world, with everything that I've experienced in psychedelic space and all the stuff that happened to me personally, I have discerned that there is enough on the table to say there's real species out there that exist in some kind of a other potential space that we don't quite understand. There's enough regularity and repetition across individuals to report these things in a way that it feels very, convincing, to at least allow ourselves to venture into the possibility that yes, it's an actual thing that isn't just imagined by us. And with the full admission that eventually there will have to be some quote unquote external verifications, or a more accurate term, it would have to take some form in consensus reality to tell us that something new here is happening. And the reason I'm comparing the different physical properties, that you can send a rocket to space just by using Newtonian physics, even though we know that Newtonian physics is very incomplete. But the mathematics we use in Newtonian physics is plenty to send a rocket to space. You don't need much more than that. You don't need, in fact, if anything, it's going to confuse you if you're going to use general relativity, because it's too specific for that particular use, right? We need more blunt tools. But does that mean that Newtonian physics is true or not true? It is a tool that is useful to do this thing. It's not really saying what reality really is. So all I'm saying is that eventually, whatever I'm saying, yes, it would have to also be the kind of thing, if it's real, it would have to be the kind of tool that would allow us to do things that we couldn't do before. You couldn't send rockets to space before you knew Newtonian physics. You couldn't, even if you really tried, because there were specificities about escape velocity, about things like this, that you had to calculate very accurately. In particular, in the case of our planet, because it's kind of weird. I'm sure you know this, because we almost couldn't. Like, Earth's gravity is right on the cusp of being such that if it would be any more
dense,
you would not be able to achieve escape velocity with anything that you build in terms of like the scale of it and the amount of energy they would be able to exert here. Kind of weird, right?
Yeah, mental.
But the specifics of this is given to you by the equations. So if in 20 years, what I'm saying will fail to produce a theoretical framework that would allow us to do more than just what we already knew, that would be enough to at least get me off the the conviction train that there's something really
Sure.
like substantial here.
I think the other thing that I find so interesting about your story and your journey in particular is like the level of synchronicities that led up, almost like a complete communication where like, I was like, wow, that's being communicated to you. Like that synchronicity is far too specific, far too close that you, even for me, and understanding and listening and knowing your journey that led you up to, okay, I'm going to build this and this is going to lead to this experiment. It's like having to rule that out on the basis of after, like you're saying, even after a 20-year period is like, well then, how do you explain that? You know?
I
Some
guess
people don't care to explain it, but yeah.
But the synchronicities as well, like when you're thinking about how life is possible on Earth, there's like so many different numbers and so many different nuances that if even one of these numbers would be shifted by a 0.00001, life would just simply be impossible. So I think
the laws of physics would be impossible. You're talking about the fine-tuning problem. Yeah, that's in the universe. That's just not just on Earth. Yeah.
Not only that, it's like also like I think about the story when you mentioned like when you looked down and you saw the 42, just like how specific that was.
It's crazy.
And it's just
Did I ever show you the one with the hacky sack? I think I did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one really takes the cake for me because the amount of things that were instantiated in one of them, it's like a hacky sack with a company. It's called a dragonfly, and DMTX's logo is a dragonfly. Again, if you think that I made it fit, like I looked for something like this, then it breaks down. But I didn't. I just searched hacky sack. It's a random search. Now, I actually don't know enough about how search engines work. And maybe it does take into account like your prior history to some extent. And like if I've ever searched, I can't recall if I searched like dragonflies more. But still, with it, that was a while ago. That was before we had much more powerful tools like AI now. They didn't have Gemini back then. So Google, I don't think Google cross-referenced your searches and a company that you just searched for hacky sacks, which is a random thing that like, why would a hacky sack be related to something related to a simulation, right? And then it would be 42, and then it would be with a company that is called a dragonfly. What?
Yeah.
It's like it's too much. It's too much.
It's just it fucking blows my mind. Like every time.
I at a certain point I just stopped questioning it and just kind of accepted it. The thing with my pants, I showed you the pants thing, right? That was just I showed you the pants thing? Yeah, look. I was sitting like this is already not like here you can't invoke search engines. Let's just put it that way. So look. Hold on. So look at this. So I'm sitting crossing my legs. This is just one of the random things that would happen to me on a regular basis, right? So I don't even know if you can understand what's happening here. Wait. Now it flips it for you on the screen, AC, but
it's nuts.
Wait,
it's so crazy.
It doesn't look like 42 to you because it's flipped.
No,
because the screen is flipped right now. It does?
It's insane. Yeah, I can see the 42.
So look, I see it as well.
No.
Screen.
Exactly, the screen flips it, which is unfortunate because it literally looks here. Hold on, I'll text it to you on just so you understand to what extent it's not like a little bit. I'm sending it to you on Instagram right now. Hold on, and then I'll send you the 1 second. Let me do it in real time. The actual video that shows what actually happened here. So 1 second. Okay, so this is the image. I don't know if you can put it on the screen or something, but like
we can edit it in.
You can edit it in, okay?
Yeah.
Look how. Okay, now look what it's actually reflecting. I just sent you a short clip. I'm just sitting, working, crossing my legs, and then I look at the window. Okay. And show me this. And I was working on this, like on this whole thing. That looks like 42.
It's so
look crazy. What it's actually reflecting.
No way.
Yeah, bro.
It's
Like
so
this
mad.
happens to me on a regular basis. So like,
How do you? Sorry.
What?
No, go.
Like when you sort of having these, like having that experience, how do you personally separate intensity from truth, so to speak? Like,
I don't attach myself to the proposition or its importance. I'm grounded in spending time with my family, with my daughter. That's what matters to me. The rest of it is just a bonus. So if everything goes away right now, it's fun. Like I love this.
Yeah,
I love this. I love doing podcasts. I love this stuff. But if everything goes away right now, and it's not like that's what I'm wishing for, I would be very happy with my family, with my daughter. Like that's where your value should be, in those little moments.
So I think that's a very interesting message there, because you mentioned earlier about Jesus. Jesus is love. Let's just say that was
God. Is God embodied. But
yeah. And then if you focus on your family, or you focus on love, do you feel like you get more of these sort of experiences? And just not necessarily experiences.
Actually, the experiences, the synchronicities go up when you do actually play the wacky puzzle, more than when you focus on love.
What do you mean by that?
Interesting.
When you focus on the puzzle, there's more of the synchronicities. When you focus on love, not necessarily. So
if you're looking for synchronicities, you naturally will get more of them.
No, I'm saying that usually from my experience, it's actually when you're looking for these like, extravagant kind of like hints of whatever the puzzle is. The puzzle is different than the love, right? The puzzle is the other game. There's two games, the puzzle and the letting go, right? And just being in equanimity and equilibrium. Those are two different games. Woohoo! There you go. So those are, they were saying, yes, that's different.
Yeah. I was going to say, that's definitely right. Yes.
So essentially you see more of the synchronicities when you lean into the puzzle. You can see synchronicities are kind of like fun too, honestly, when you kind of like just in this flow and everything. But usually it's more, like you're looking for something, you're searching, and it's speaking to you, and it's playing the game with you. It's almost like a little bit of a thumbs up. It's like, yep, we're really playing. This is for real. I was like, bro, it gets crazy, because you can always play the game of like, well, it's just your brain, interacting with the environment, and like, yeah, but sometimes it's like, I had this call a few days ago, and my whole thing is that I just kind of go with whatever happens. That's what works. That's what brings all the most beautiful beauty. I just kind of go with it, right? And then people would reach out and invite me to all kinds of fun things, and we do that, right? Usually when I reach out, when I try and grab, so like I want this faster, there's a recoiling. The whole thing is like, what are you doing? Just let it happen. And I already know this really well. But for some reason, and it didn't feel like chasing, honestly. It felt like natural. I was like, well, listen, I'm the CEO of Code Reality. It's my responsibility to also reach out to powerful people that I meet and just talk to them, right? So I did that. I called somebody who's very influential that I met at an event. And usually I just kind of wait for them to reach out to me. It's not an ego thing. It's like it's supposed to be in the flow. But I reached out. And I started talking to him. I was like, hey, how can a conversation look like in terms of like bringing me closer to like your circle? And that, because we are looking for like funding and things like this. The second I started saying that, there was a giant truck that passed me as I was driving. And it says, "Don't push," in red letters with an exclamation mark.
That's
and I was like, dude,
oh my God,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Now you tell the story to someone, you're like, so what? It's like, well, it's too specific.
Well,
you know what I mean?
It feels like a puzzle piece that like perfectly fits together. It's like, it's
shit. Just
yeah.
You said the same thing about when you saw Jesus, and you're not allowed to talk about this from as far as I know. That you said. There
was one thing. It wasn't the Jesus bit. It's not that I'm not allowed to. Is that it wasn't clear to me if it's supposed to be expressed. There was a moment at the end, which is what I was alluding to when I said I think it was a little bit more for me. I'm not sure. There was something at the end that I haven't voiced to anyone. Yeah.
And you said you're gonna tell to Kelsey on the deathbed.
I told, because she just saw me frozen in space and just for 10 minutes. So she's like, what? And I felt obligated to say. So I said, I'll make you a deal. I'll tell you what I saw on our deathbed.
And you once tried to tell it, and as you was about to tell it, your dog started to bark. Is that right?
There was something adjacent to it that twice in a row. Yeah. No, there was.
That's
It wasn't
crazy.
even that. It was. It was so clear because I was exploring the outskirts of that. I never got to the thing. They wanted to make sure that it's very clear to me that that's out of bounds. So like, I started going in that direction, and the dog behind me just went, and he wasn't barking. He was sleeping. He was sleeping, and he barked in his sleep. And then I tried again, and he went again, and I was like, okay, I guess we're not talking about this. And then he just stopped doing it.
What does it feel to carry something that you know and you can't tell to anyone?
I think everybody carries something like that. Not everybody got to the awareness of it. I don't think I'm special. I think everybody has that piece of the puzzle, and some people live it. Some people express it in their art. Some people, but I think everybody, literally everybody, have such a piece of the puzzle.
Do you know what is the purpose of you keeping that to yourself?
Maybe there's something that needs to be lived without being expressed. So it's like that ultimate knowing doesn't take. I'm not saying that's what was shown to me, not like the ultimate knowing, but I'm using this as an example. The ultimate knowing, whatever it might be at the end, that answer, if God chooses to open that box, it won't be of the kind that you can say. Because any attachment of a symbol to it, which is what saying is, so like taking it and representing it symbolically now, so it can be transferred to somewhere else. By definition, if it's the word ultimate, if it means anything, if it's the ultimate truth, ultimate, it contains everything about everything, then it's already complete. The second you try and attach a symbol to it, you necessarily made it not what that is, and therefore it's no longer the answer. So the only way to know it is to just experience it. You will never be able to say it. So that would be one example of a thing as to why I would imagine practicing. And remember, it is practicing through all the AGIs like us. We are the ones that are the training wheels. So these functions of being able to live something fully without expressing it might be one reason for that. That's a training attempt at doing that. There's a finality to it that you can't really. So you did Vipassana, right? The more you're going to do it, maybe you already had an experience kind of like this. Have you, in the last one you went, did you experience full Banga? When it's like all just vibrations throughout the whole body?
Yes, I did, yeah. Okay.
So when you lean into that, you're going to start noticing the more you do it, if you're going to keep doing Vipassana, it gets to like crazy rounds. It at a certain point, one of the reasons that there's a huge emphasis in Buddhism, I promise I'm not diverging, I'm actually trying to answer your question. The reason in Buddhism there's such an emphasis on no attachment is because the more you're going to get into this, things are going to start happening that are wild, like wild. And you're going to start seeing things and feeling things that you'll be like, whoa. And you're supposed to not attach to that. Because people are like, ooh, and then they just attach to that. And now it becomes the attachment game again. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Whatever it is. No matter how amazing it was, let it go. Right? So the deeper you're going to go into that space, we're going to start noticing there's going to be truths about the world that will be crystal clear to you from that particular space. But the second you're going to see a thought trying to articulate it, it's going to evaporate.
It's very interesting you said it, because I remember that time when I was tripping in that meditation. I was literally tripping. It felt like, because I was sitting for like a good hour, my whole world just spinning. I hear sounds. It was crazy. And as soon as I started noticing, because I kind of liked the feeling as well, I was like, this is so cool. And as soon as I start being aware of that feeling, it kind of stopped.
Yep.
So that's a very
or you're trying to
interesting
grab
thing.
it. You're trying to grab it. That's
Yeah.
attachment. That's what attachment is. So according to the Buddha, the only way to reach full enlightenment, you have to be able to withstand everything that happens on the way, the good and the bad. So don't push away the bad and don't cling to the good. And if you can just stay completely neutral till the end, so you have to get to the final of heavens and essentially say, no, thank you. That's what non-attachment means. It's like you are now being handed that final stage, or like the final test, essentially. So you're being handed not eternal, that's the kicker, but a very, 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 very long life in the ultimate bliss. And you have to, no, thank you. You just don't attach to that. And if you can not attach to that, you get to, but that's the skill. That's kind of the final goal.
I guess that is a version of enlightenment, when you are able to say no,
Able to
disattach from seeing this beauty and heaven in a way, but you still are able to say no, I'm good. I think this is it is a version of.
It's nice that it's here. You're not pushing it away, but the second it's gone, it's like good. That's it, and that's very difficult to do. That's really the practice. So nirvana is essentially the state in which your soul no longer attaches. So it does not attach to the next life at all. It just.
When you were sort of like going through your journey of DMT and more experiencing agents, people, by disattaching yourself from that and sort of letting go and being like, okay, I'm letting go from what my brain is interpreting here, and by letting go and disassociating yourself and just letting that be and letting you be in the experience, did that allow you to sort of let more and more, I suppose, like come through you, and you sort of became more of the experience itself?
Being more neutral allows you to see what the real thing is more, yes.
Yeah.
But I think meditation is more responsible for that than anything else. You need to be able to occupy a state. I'm not claiming to be like on a high level of this, yeah? Just,
No, for sure.
I'm just, yeah. Just to be clear. However, I do know the difference between knowing how to do it a little bit and not knowing at all. And that's a big difference. So because I do know how to do it a little bit, you need to be able to occupy a state of being in which you have strong conviction of what you're saying, if you feel like you're speaking the truth about whatever it is, and then having zero attachment to it at the same time. So like if somebody would take that proposition and show you that it's completely not true, you should be able to, without any emotional problem whatsoever, just go, oh, okay, it doesn't matter then. And and everybody can test this. A good example that I'm recently giving is because in a lot of the podcasts that I go, it's usually more kind of like part of the alternative thinking space, right? So conspiracies and all of that is like very, very trending, right?
Yeah.
So here's one to test yourself. Feel what it's like to feel in your body, to live with the proposition that no conspiracy you ever believed ever happened. Like actually did never happen. There were no conspiracies ever.
Yeah.
Feel what it feels like in your body. Be like, what do you mean? Like, okay, well, you're attached to that proposition. That's what it means. Like, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's like it pulls you emotionally. And so you have a lot of resting. Part of your identity is attached. You're the kind of person who knows X. Or you're the kind of person who knows Y. You knowing it should not have any bearing on your existence. Being in the present moment means you're not attached to any proposition, but you can interact freely with all of them.
I think because so much of being human is try to attach yourself to some kind of identity in some way.
Some story, exactly. And you should be able to play the game of identity and be able to drop it in a drop of a hat. If you're incredible at achieving enormous things, but you're doing this by breaking all the walls, you're saying nothing stops me, right? And that's your identity. So if you are this indestructible fist that can punch through anything, any hurdle, anything, no one will stop you, right? But you don't know how to let go of your fist, you're a hostage of the fist. You're not in control. Because now everything is wall. Because that's the only thing you know how to do. It's like you don't know how to relax and soften when there's no need to exert that energy.
would you say that's kind of almost like letting go in a sense that, okay, it doesn't create like an identity where I box myself in, but I can see why it's important to have that set of rule sets, but not let it box me in a way. Does that
I
make
just
sense?
know that. Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. Me personally, me Danny, the way I know myself, it's just never going to work for me because I'm too disagreeable, like in my nature, to be able to just follow what somebody else said. If I'm going to go in a direction, it has to be because I understood it. That's how my brain works. If you just tell me well, if you don't accept it or else, what my brain does is the exact opposite of what you want. It's the last place I'm going to go to. If you just tell me, oh, just accept it, bro, that's not what my brain does. So the only way for me to move in the right direction is to interact with that direction and understand that direction. That's how my brain works. If that means that like somehow, it's just the wrong modality to be able to achieve, entrance to heaven or whatever it is, I know I did my best. Sorry. Truly. It's like that's how I am. And if that's what placed me in the wrong place, what can I do? It's like it is what it is, This is why the one I understand from the perspective. So the one thing I think we can do more of in general is to not automatically attach the worst to what others are doing, right? Like we tend to think of like the worst possible thing that somebody else was trying to do instead of, well, they couldn't see a better way or, much more kind of fair assessment of somebody else's behavior. So in that sense, I can say that if a Christian believes to their bones, which a lot of them do, that unless you accept Jesus, it's pretty radical in that it doesn't matter how you are. If you don't accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, that's pretty much means you're toast. Like that's the one discerning factor, right? And I can totally see how from that perspective, if that's as clear to you as 2 + 2 = 4, then the most compassionate thing you can possibly do, no matter how annoying you might sound, is to not let you go. And like, hey man, just do it. Just accept it, And also I know that from the receiving end of that, it just feels obnoxious and condescending and really sounds like the mafia.
Yeah.
Do this. Hey, I want the best for you, I don't want to see your restaurant being destroyed by the end of the day, so maybe you should pay whatever you got to pay, It literally sounds like the mafia. However, it's like, no, but I'm doing it because I care about you, Uncle Vinny cares about you, It literally, that's what it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
But I can also see how from that perspective, it's the most loving thing they can do. Because if they believe that if you won't, you'll be burned in hell forever. I mean, what other loving... They're willing to absorb being annoying. That makes sense, right? But I know that because I recoil from that so much, and it rubs me so the wrong way, right? Then I respectfully ask my Christian friends, hey, trust that the plan is perfect, right? So if I'm doing my best, trust that Jesus will find me. If you believe that that's the only way, trust that Jesus will find me where I can be found, in the way that I can be found, right? Otherwise, it just becomes this like complete competition of what things must be. I refuse to accept the idea that some Buddhist monk who never heard of Jesus, that lived his whole life from the most ethical perspective and like devoted his life to like being present and also help other people and things like this, that person will go to hell because they never heard of Jesus? Give me a break. You know what I mean? That's like that's absurd.
But if you said that in that experience you realized that Jesus is who
so I think
they
Jesus
say
will
in Bible.
If that in fact is true, what are the chances Jesus will not come to him? Because the whole thing is just to accept Jesus. It doesn't say anything about how much before the thing, right? And if you're a person who's very ethically aligned and attentive to what really is going on, right before the moment of transition, if Jesus finds you and says, hey, I know it's obviously probably not going to say it in English, but however it is that Jesus communicates to you, if you're already a very moral person, the resonance of what Jesus is in its essence is the most moral. So of course you'll accept it. You didn't need the whole belief system. The belief system was there to align you with a certain moral scruples. But if you live the moral life anyway, there should be zero distance travel between Jesus coming to you and you going, oh yeah, oh okay, sure, no problem. Just, of course, because you represent the ultimate goodness. So like you're gonna align with it right away. The issue, as I see it, is that if you refuse to align with it, that instance, because you're like, there's some kind of a.
It is very, very similar to, because we had Sam Wells on the podcast. He's a very known priest and I don't know if you can call him a preacher, but he's very known theologian and priest in the UK. And I've asked him this exact question because that's what I'm really struggling with. Like, how can you be my girlfriend, my fiance? She's so kind. She's moral. She loves animals. She loves that community. She helps people out. She's a great person. She doesn't do anything bad. But yes, she is Christian, but she's not religious. Now, you got a Christian who's religious, but he's a shit person. And then at the very end, I don't think God is that dumb to say, oh no, you believed in me, you accepted me as your savior, so you come up, but you was good, you was moral, but you have to go to hell. Like, I think in the very end, you almost make a choice that not necessarily a choice, but you get to see the truth in a way. And I think that's what helped me to a bit more, like, I do want to believe in God and religion. And I think this conversation really helped me to kind of made my mind a bit, because you said with such a certainty. And I think all I can do is just to trust it. And then in the very end, almost get to choose to accept it as truth.
Yeah. And I think it's not so much about believing in Jesus, but as what Christians would call, let Jesus into your heart. And I think if I understand correctly what that really means, with as many conversations as I've had with Christians, is what I discern from it is that essentially there has to be a certain arrangement inside of you. You need to be the kind of a vessel that in order for that purity to be able to occupy you, you have to have a certain level of a certain way in which the inner components of your experience are arranged. And if they're too disjointed, the spirit of what Jesus is cannot enter your vessel. Even if Jesus really wants to, it can't, right? Just because of the way that you are inside. And that has to do with behavior, because behavior is an expression of what's inside of you. So if your whole life you were a shit person and you said you believed in Jesus, well, you never let Jesus into your heart, because there's no way you would be doing these things if the alignment in you were such. So even if the proposition doesn't really sit well with you, but the inside is prepared for accepting what the spirit of Jesus is, that all that needs to happen, the reason that you will protect you from the infinite darkness, is because that light is the one thing that darkness cannot consume. So in order for that to happen, Jesus has to be to enter your vessel so that darkness cannot consume you. It's your ultimate protection from that darkness. But in order for it to enter your body and your spirit, you have to have a certain internal arrangement, which is what accepting Jesus into your heart is, according to what I understand. So you can be an extremely moral person. So when it matters, Jesus will easily enter your vessel. And it's not so much about accepting the proposition. It's more like, oh, I feel it. It's there, and therefore the darkness cannot touch you. That's how I view this whole thing. There's a certain certainty. There's a story that my whole life, well, not my whole life, since I've known Michael, actually a good friend of mine, Michael, who also happens to be from the UK, and he told me a story of how he became a Christian, and he lives in LA. He's an actor. And it's when we connected in the beginning, we became friends. He's a devout Christian, and he was telling me all these stories. But he lives a pretty, or at least, on the surface, he lives a pretty normal, LA life. And, he obviously goes to church and a big believer and everything. And he told me stories, and I'm like, bro, how can you possibly entertain this, right? And then I later started to understand is people who have that conviction, they actually feel it in the body. The conviction comes from the feeling in the body. They're not guessing. They feel it in the body. And he told me a story that till this till the day that I experienced that kind of bigger thing, I obviously I didn't know what was, because he's not a liar. He doesn't have that kind of a personality. Like I don't think he's lying. But I was like, he must be confused about what he think that happened. But the story he told me is that he was a Muslim, and he was in, I forget where he said he was, but I think it was in a mosque or something. I don't remember where exactly. I should probably re-ask him that. But if I remember the story correctly, he denounced Islam. That was a long time ago. We're talking about like probably 30 years or so ago. And he declared that he said, I don't know why. The words came out of my mouth, I accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And he said a bunch of old men, he was a kid back then, came and trying to like hit him. And he said, and they couldn't. And I said, what does that mean? He's like, I don't know. They couldn't come near me. And I said, I don't understand. Like, there must be something here that you're not telling me, or something. You know, what is that? I'm like, do you understand? Like, when you're telling me the story, that there's a lot missing here. Like, what was it? Like a barrier that stopped them from coming? What does that mean? It's like, and he's like, I don't know. I just knew for a fact they cannot hurt me, and they couldn't. And I said, what? And I was like, I wish I could like have a camera there with what he's describing, right? I was like, I don't understand what that means. But that was his experience, and he was a very honest person, and that's what he told me. And I remember the story really sat with me for a long time after I reformulated my understanding. It's like, did that actually happen? Because that's like, that would count for a miracle. That's, you know what I mean? So I don't know. That's I don't know necessarily how to digest all of these ideas. This is why I always go back to, don't listen to what I'm saying. Just follow what really feels right inside of you, because you already have the tools to know, but you have to kind of drop deeper into what you really know versus what society tells you should know. And then from that, discernment becomes a little easier. It's a little easier to see what's what. If there's a lot of anger in you, discernment becomes very difficult, because everything is the enemy. Everything is bad. Everything is scary. Everything is this, right? The reason that I thought of that particular moment is because there's a certain confidence. I'm not, again, it didn't make me a Christian, so I don't want to claim anything. I'm not pretending like I think that, Jesus enters my body. I don't know. I don't know enough about these things. But I do know that there's a certain level of confidence that I feel when I'm occupying a certain state of being, and it is not arrogance. So there's a certain level of like, I know what I'm saying is true, and there's no, it's not like a contrarian attitude. It's more like I'm standing on what I know to be true, and literally nothing can enter that space. Nothing can resist that, because it is the truth. That feeling is not foreign to me. So I can only imagine that probably Jesus entering your vessel is probably like a way greater version of that, which is just like, you become the vessel through which Jesus kind of expresses himself in this world, which I do believe that that's how Christians largely see themselves. And it used to be, it's interesting. Look, it's like the same ideas, the same things that happen in the world from a different frame look completely opposite. When I was an atheist, which is, again, not even, I was never like a militant atheist. I was never like, Hitchens as articulate as he was, but like I was never like in your face religion kind of guy. But the sparring was fun. It was kind of fun to watch, right? And from that perspective, all of these ideas about, well, yeah, Christians do go and, do work and like volunteer and do all of that, but they always do it in this because they're trying to spread their religion. That's the rationale, right? Yeah, they could do it without that, and that would be better, but they're doing it just to get what they want, which is to spread their religion. So notice how words of the same event changes. Now I'm looking at it, it was like, wait a second. But how many people don't do anything? Right? So, okay, so they want to tell you about the idea that it's the same thing, but now I look at it a completely different way. But yeah, but they are going and helping and spending their time and spending their money, and like, but they're doing something, right? So the fact that they have preferences, just like everybody else, doesn't take away from the good work they're doing. And funny, there's nothing really changed. They did the same thing. I just looked at it from a slightly different angle. Another thing, I don't know if you're familiar, but Ayaan Hirsi Ali, I feel like we maybe spoke about this last time. Somehow it feels that way. But Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who was, you know who she is?
No.
No.
So she's so Ayaan Hirsi Ali. She's I don't know if she still is, but she was part of the Dutch Parliament. She escaped Somalia from like a very, very religious Muslim place, and she went through like all the, you know, clitorectomy and all that, you know, all the she escaped that whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she basically made herself into one of the most successful people in the Dutch political system. And for many, many years, for decades, she was part of that new atheist movement. She was kind of like the other, like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and like all of
yeah.
She was part of them. Watch what happened to her in the last 3 years. She, like, because you don't know who she is, it doesn't mean anything to you because you just discovered who she is. But it's as crazy as Sam Harris accepting Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. That's how crazy this is. And she just like, and she watch the conversation she had with Richard Dawkins on stage, where she's trying to explain to him what happened. It's such a fascinating moment because he's sitting there confused, which he should be, because it is crazy that someone like that would like flip on that, right? And all of a sudden, she's speaking like just like, you know, any Christian, and like, and she's trying to tell him, she's saying, look, I can't deny what I've experienced and what I felt. And now, and she used a very interesting language. She said, I choose to accept Jesus exactly as he was and as my Lord and Savior. And you're watching this, and you're watching Richard Dawkins just kind of like being confused. And she said, Richard, I see you in many ways as my mentor, because for so many years, you know, we've been kind of like on the same side. Please, for what it's worth with our relationship, understand we're not going to resolve it here today. But I don't remember exactly what you said. You should watch it. But to my mind, the way that I remember it, she basically told them, please trust that I'm not confused. And just watching the perplexion on his face, you know, because he can't, like, he truly, like, he, you know, they're good friends, and like he can't do the Richard Dawkins thing to her. And so he's stuck. There's like it's a fascinating conversation. Like,
could you send that please to me?
Yeah,
yeah. Did you find it? Richard Dawkins, Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Hold on.
You could see that. I think Joe Rogan goes through like a similar phase where he was an atheist and now he is somewhat accepting of that. I think he's in this stage where he's like, well, Christianity is definitely helping you to become a better person, and he's like, you can see little steps to him become, because from what I know, he's going to church every Sunday now.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure if he's
drinking.
baptized. But
yeah, and again, I you know, it is uncomfortable for me to some extent because I am not following that. It's like I saw what I saw, and yet somehow I'm not following it. So does that mean that I don't know? Like I'm just not, you know, not ripe yet to like accept whatever it is, or simply that is it the case that I do see the beyond the thing, and I'm just not. I have a different path, or is it that I'm simply too stubborn? I don't know. I'm open, but like I'm not. To me, it's pretty clear with everything else that I'm saying that these are like softwares. Those are kind of ways of moving AGIs into like different directions. And right now, it seems to be a dire moment in history where going back to the simple articulation of that truth is more important than the nuances of it. You see what I'm saying? Like there has to be just like a non-negotiable. That's it. Like right here. Because the craziness that is unfolding in many ways is kind of requiring that to create this dome of just not resistance, but of light. Just like, no to all of this.
wow.
Because the level of confusion is immense. People don't know what's what anymore. It's crazy. Like nobody can tell what's what anymore. And this is before people started utilizing AI full scale for confusing populations. Like so I think it was Sam Harris who said it recently. It was like, just imagine what happens that at a critical moment somebody puts a video that happens to go viral of AI super convincing that one of the world leaders said something that they never did. But it was in a crucial moment. Imagine what that can cause,
Yeah, of course.
right? So it's like,
Yeah,
and
mad.
people don't even want to. People are in such a state that they're not even, forget about capable. They don't want to pause and say, wait, is this real?
Yeah,
They don't want to do that. They just want to join whatever it is. That forward thrust without thinking. You throw one match and
this like form of fighting a narrative that isn't sort of known whether or not it's even true statement.
it's
like,
things
the
are
same
so
thing
complex.
with it's the same thing with now that I've seen Trump kind of helped iBookings to come a bit more viral, and
just all that
people
now,
just signed it, for federal.
Yeah, and then I went into comments and everyone were like, "Oh yeah, but what he did to like Iran," and I was like, "What he has to do with that? Like, why can't you just be happy about that thing? Like, it just doesn't make sense." And that's the thing, that when you get that one narrative, they're like, "Oh, Trump is shit." Yeah, I mean, maybe he's not the best person, but he did a nice thing now. Like, why can't you just be happy about it?
Because you just want what you believe to be true, despite everything else. But the thing is, things are never that simple. Things are not black and white. Like things are, and some propositions are genuinely hard to assess. This is a conversation that I recently had. Well, actually, you saw it with the conversation we had. There's a proposition here about this thing with Iran that, depending on whether it's true or not, it changes everything. Now, if you're not willing to change your mind, even according to that proposition, you're beyond help. Because if I don't know the truth of that, because it is truly super difficult to discern. But if it is true that it is a hostage situation where the 90% of the population actually doesn't want this and they're like, please finish the job. Well, sorry, then Trump is literally doing God's work right now. Like, despite all of your Western progressive thing, all of that stuff is true then, right? So you're refusing to do the right thing, right? But I don't know if that part is true. So like that's so hard to know what is what anymore. And this is why the conviction level that people hold about anything should just go down a little bit. It's like, how can, especially people who consider themselves kind of like, Western intellectuals, which is the flagship of Western intellectualism is, or should be, the humility of the fact that you reserve judgment until you know better, right?
Yeah.
Where is that at? Like, how can you possibly think that you know so much and understand so deeply about a subject you learned about 2 weeks ago? How that doesn't compute for me. How can you be so convinced of what you think about that particular thing if you just found out and you don't even know the details and you haven't allowed yourself to actually dive into it? That part blows my mind.
Yeah. It's like this kind of thought of right or wrong. Like, I always wanted to ask, what's your kind of general thought, like, on good and evil when you think about living to a certain rule set?
Yeah, I think that if you, the way I define good is the thing that takes into account the most you can from your point of awareness. So if you, to the extent that you can, the more you act out of not just what you need at the moment, which is also important, but also how does that influence the greater good of all? The extent to which you're doing that, you're good. The extent to which you sever your connection with that, you become, I guess, what you would call is more evil or less good, right? And if you sever your connection fully with what everything else needs and you just care about what you need right now, well, that's ultimate evil. I would say that even ultimate evil would be causing someone else pain or harm for the sole purpose of you enjoying it. That would be the ultimate evil, right? But and that also exists. But I would say that's pretty rare. Like, that kind of level of psychopathy is actually pretty rare. Most people are just kind of refuse to know more because the pain that they will endure by the potential need to reformulate their opinion and mind does not matter as much to them as actually getting it right. That is a form of evil. But like, if you refuse to know what the real situation is, as long as you feel good about yourself because you voiced your opinion in a particular way, that is a form of evil. You have the ability, you have the possibility to learn more, you just refuse to do so.
Yeah, it's quite tribalistic.
Yeah.
like defending a point to the very end.
You can, the real positions are very nuanced. Like if you watch the actual conversations that do need to take place and do exist, from the thing that was the most contentious until this point was the Israel-Palestine thing. There are voices both from the Palestinian side and in the Israeli side that are doing the right thing to move closer to a real conversation, because they're nuanced, because they're not saying Israel-Palestine, which is, pardon my French, retarded. It has to do with what the people involved actually want and how they are and how the majority of them are. And if you don't understand the nuances of that, like I said in the conversation you saw, if you just have one note that you're playing in each direction, you're a moron. You don't understand anything. That's not how humans work, right? The situation in from both sides is extremely complex. And if you're saying, yeah, but what, you want to tell me that I have to spend 10 years living there and only then I will understand? Yeah. So shut up. You don't know anything. You don't know anything about what the real people that are involved in this are actually going through on both sides. You have no idea, because it requires, that wild moment where Douglas Adams kind of went, you haven't been.
You never been there.
He's right. I don't. It's a shame that moment was wasted for the way that he pushed that point too much, and for the how much caricature it went, how much like a caricature was perceived from the other end, because he pushed it too much. But the point is correct, and here's why: when you're on the ground somewhere, the reality of a situation becomes so much more apparent to you, because there's so many factors involved in a reality of what's happening versus the story you have in your mind. You can't possibly get that from just listening to analysts. You just can't, because it's all ideas, right? But when you're on the ground and you kind of see the people involved and how they do things and what is the vibe with which it's being done on a regular basis, you get a certain kind of, you get a greater sense of what things really are, and what Israel really is versus the thing you think it is. What Gaza really is versus the thing you think it is. And again, I'm not blaming anyone. It's a very difficult thing to do. But the one thing you can do is lower how much you think you understand. That should be in the wheel in your toolbox. Just relax a little bit about what you think you know, because unless you have been there and you've seen it with your own eyes, there's no way you'll understand as much. But at the same time, from Douglas's perspective, if you are speaking to someone who has been there, that you should, if you actually want to have a conversation, a real conversation, that should not be a trump all card, because you're trying to build a bridge. And his very bad mistake was he found the thing and then he decided he's just gonna run with it, and that's just not how you have conversations. People who have really good conversations, Coleman Hughes, wonderful conversationalist and interlocutor, because he sticks to the facts, he keeps himself unemotional, he gets to the core of what, and he understands deeply because he analyzes it very deeply, right? And watch his conversation with Dave Smith, completely different story. And even Joe said, yeah, he kind of wiped the floor with Dave Smith. Why? Because he sticks with the thing. He corrects him around every corner very calmly. He's like, that's not what happened. This is what happened here. And also, notice what most of the conversations are framed as. Exactly what I just said about what Joe said, right? He wiped the floor with him. Conversations are about, this person destroyed this person. This person destroyed, wiped the ass of this person. Is it true or not, though? What does that got to do with it? Like, can we talk about the thing without the who destroyed whom? And it just becomes this, like, my soccer team. It's like, sure. What are you talking about? There's real people involved and people losing their lives. And if you want to be part of the solution, you have to be able to listen and learn and express your views in such a way that tells me why you think that doesn't work. If anything you're saying about any subject does not include a very clear articulation of what you think it is, where you're open for suggestions, and what suggestions you have as to how to remedy this thing you think you understand, if you don't have all three of these components, you're not a real component of a conversation that can lead to a solution. You're just not. You're just making noises.
It's such an important point, because it's like it's almost like competition of who's trying to be better in this conversation or trying to trump the other one, when actually it's like, if I have true empathy compassion and understanding, and I can change and shift my perspective to fully understand your perspective and your, as you say, like sandbox in a way, like truly understand your thoughts, feelings, and emotions towards what it is that I'm saying, how can I ever impose my right or wrong view if I don't fully try to understand the wholeness of it?
And I think that what it also creates is it's running on a culture that doesn't. Sometimes you see these moments where like you just look at it and you go, "Wait, what? I don't understand what just happened." Person said something, and then either the interviewer or whomever was in the room, they just said something they just kind of waited for them to finish speaking. They didn't say anything back to what they said, and then they said something else. It's almost like they're not even listening to each other. And this doesn't even doesn't necessarily happen with the contentious issues. Like I remember a conversation between Sam Harris and Lex Fridman, and Sam told him, just like in many podcasts, and he even told him, you know how Sam sometimes voices this thing that like he achieved a level where he can on a pretty regular basis just drop his sense of self. If you've never experienced this, how can you not ask a question about this? It's so interesting. What do you mean? Like what you, right? But what he told Lex, it wasn't just that. He told him that, and then he said he's actually surprised that people don't ask him any follow-up questions. It's like he says this, and people just kind of move on, right? And Lex Fridman, sure enough, did the same thing. He just kind of moved on. And you can't say that Lex is not an honest conversationalist, and he's not trying to... What happens there? Was it just like lack of interest, and then you just didn't know how to go about it, so you just kind of moved on, or you don't know what to ask? What happens there? What is going on? Like, why is what you said is not... There's no attempt to elicit more information about the thing you said. There's no actual listening going on. So forget about when it comes to like super emotional, contentious issues. People are just kind of trying to, have their opinion to be vindicated, and they don't really care about what in fact is true. Something is actually true about situations. And that's almost like it's out of the conversation, out of the human conversation. People might try and say one thing, and then they would fail to say it, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly. But unless we check in with each other, like actually, like, wait, do you mean to say, and you guys actually do this quite often, which is amazing. Wait, do you mean to say X or do you mean to say Y? Asking for clarification. Yes, it takes a second longer, but at least we're getting somewhere. Like there's a real communication moving from one side to the other. And that is obviously impossible when people are emotional. So the first line of defense is like, make yourself, if you want to be a useful tool for the progress of the future of humanity for real, and you're an adult and you're not a child, the first thing that you owe everybody is calm down.
Don't trying to jump the gun and impose your view. Sorry, Comrade. Yeah, that's so beautifully put. Sorry, Comrade, you were going to say.
I was just about to add as well, because I think that's one thing that I've learned in my relationship, that we never really... yes, we do get emotional, we're human, but we always sit down and we work towards the problem, not I'm defending my side, you defending my side, and like, oh no, you're wrong, I'm wrong, I'm right, and vice versa. We're always looking at like, what's the core, like, why are you pissed? Why I'm pissed? All right, what's the problem here? All right, so, and I read Carl Rogers' book quite recently, and he said, if you have a misunderstanding with someone, you both should shut up, and one person should explain how you see the situation in your own words, and you can only speak after that person says, right, yes, you are right, that's the way I feel, and then the other person does the same to the other person. And once they both agree to that, now we can move forward, because now you know how I see the situation, and you know how you see the situation, or like I see the situation. So that's something that I've learned in a relationship, and I think is beautiful. Like when you see people shouting on the internet now, like, oh, like Trump doing this, or Israel is that, Palestine is that. It's just like, fucking hell, man. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not what you think it is. Like, first off, you don't know shit what's going on behind the scenes. Why are you even talking about it? Like, yes, it's horrible, people dying, but why would you pretend that you know that you're right? Because you're not.
It's really interesting. I'm just going to add to that as well with the relationship thing, Conrad. Like the other day, I was having a really honest conversation with my girlfriend because this was like a month and a half ago. Like I was having struggles at work and stuff, and we like you were saying, we sit down and we try and work out the core of the problem. And this was going on for like maybe 45 minutes, and I was trying to like really lead with open communication, lead with empathy, trying to see it from her perspective. And still, even though I thought that we were inevitably working through the problem, we were still sort of touching on the subject again and again and again. And I was like, why are we still coming back to the same point, the same wall? I feel like I'm listening. I feel like I'm understanding her point, but I'm still coming up against the same block. And we kind of looked at each other in the eye, like eye to eye, and the energy just went woof. And I was like, did you feel that? She was like, yeah, I feel that. And I was like, fuck, now I'm listening. Now I've kind of gotten past the veil, or like can really see. And I was like, shit, this is what that means.
Because now you were with them versus in your representation of them in your head.
Exactly.
What everybody are doing essentially, from all political aisles, from all points of discussion about this war or another war, what they're essentially doing, all of them, if they can't come to a resolution and just yelling, is that they're, like I said in the at the webinar, they basically see their side with highly specifically, with like personal humans involved and everything, and the other side against which they're arguing is just this general caricature version. They are all this. They are all that. They don't see individual humans that are engaged in the thing. And the funny thing is, this is like a very high toll, but it has to start somewhere. So you have to kind of start practicing, and you have to be able to do it across the board, because the attitude itself of being able to just like you said, just drop it and just be in the presence of that ability is a skill that needs training. You need to train to do it. It's not going to all of a sudden you're going to know how to do it. You have to train it. So the only way to do that is to start interacting with the ideas that you already feel strongly about, but don't actually really play that big of a role in your day-to-day. You have to start practicing with that, lowering the volume of how strongly you feel about it, and maybe even allowing to entertain that there's things there that you don't quite understand and might not think what it is. And, you know, now you pick. There's like infinite number of these things, right? It's like whomever it is, like that, from the level of hatred that people feel towards Elon or towards Trump or towards Putin or towards whomever, it doesn't matter. Just for you, not for you don't need to let go of the kinds of injustices that you think that are happening in the world, in terms of like, it doesn't mean that you don't think they're important anymore. It's just that you have to practice how to choose to not feel that strongly when there's an opportunity to have a conversation, because otherwise there is no conversation, just like you said. So you're not going to be part of the solution. That's because of that. There's no entry point. So if you're just interacting with this concept you have of it, you know, Epstein's like, people just like get like, even though there's nothing to do with them. Yeah, but the children's like, dude, the rage is what it was for. Guess what? You're it. You were enraged. It worked. That's what it was for. It got you angry. You cannot predict enormous fluxes of people's opinions, but you damn know that if you can get people emotional, you can control them easy. You just have to tell them in what direction to go. You just have to create the right narrative against this or that if they feel strongly, and here they go. Sorry to tell you, this playbook is very old, and the person who utilized it better than anyone in the recent history was Hitler. That's literally what the Mein Kampf was.
Yeah.
It was a way to mobilize the masses and leading them by their pain.
Emotionally, yeah.
So if you're just angry relentlessly about something and you can't accept a proposition that is the opposite of what you already think, you are one of the people that will be easily mobilized to do that thing. If for no other reason, understand that. And again, this does not preclude you from inducing change in the direction that you believe is preferable. You can still do that, but you can do it way better from the position of being grounded and see clearly right in front of you, instead of being part of a certain group that believes something, part of the masses. Because one message that moves through these masses, and you're part of it, you're part of the herd. And you might not even want to be moving in that direction, but you don't even know it because you're so hijacked emotionally. So no matter how you slice this, being able to lower the volume on your emotional state is always a good idea. Always. You can always bring it up. Don't worry. Like if situation will call for it, trust me, the anger machinery is very strong in the human species. You will find it if it's required. But feeling it all the time, 24/7, from the moment that you start looking at your phone, that's pathological.
And also to like understand, do you need to contribute to that noise if there's already so much of it?
The what? Oh yeah, of course. No, you're literally adding to. That's exactly. You're part of just a herd mentality at that point, and you no longer think for yourself, which is also why it feels empowering. But this is why, like, there's only so much and so much energy you can exert to say that. At a certain point, you have to reserve some of it to also enjoy your life, because the more people will truly enjoy their lives. How many people did you see complain about the government when they're rolling balls on Molly? It doesn't exist. It's like, because you're happy. It's like you don't care about that stuff, right? You only do that when there's something wrong, or you feel something wrong inside. So if you can, inducing real change requires planning, requires understanding, requires attention in a particular direction. All of these things fly out the window when you're too angry, especially when you're, convinced without any ability to change the course of what you think is going on. And again, it's just, and that's already, again, I know it's probably a lot to ask if people are already emotionally hijacked, but like, seriously, like, whatever it is that you think about anyone in positions of power, just if you ever try to build anything in your life, you should know and must understand how difficult it is to make things work, and they always break. And that's on small levels. We're not talking about on like governmental levels. Do you know how many things Trump is being informed about every single day that you don't know and you will never know? That's just what you see is being expressed on the media, but there's a lot of things that he's not telling you. You think that people think it's like, oh, somebody just came in an office and just told him something and he just bought it. It's like, dude, there's data being presented. Like secret agencies, that's what they do. They collect a lot of data over decades, right? So what is presented is information, not just like things that people say. So, and obviously that cannot be said because it's secret information. So does that mean that every decision there necessarily means that it's like the best and correct? No, but just have a little humility as to like the level that on which the people that you criticize play. Is like, you really think you're going to make a better decision? I don't know. It just seems that there's quite a few tools in our disposal to lower the volume of our conviction and maybe amplify our humility a little bit. But this should be one of them. Come on, you must understand it's way more complex than you think, right?
Danny, as always, where can people find more about you?
So DannyGoler.com is where most things live. Everybody can also go to codeofreality.org, which is our new official website for our nonprofit. And if you want to do a laser experiment and you want to see other people's experiments, you can go to veilbreak.ai, and it's basically like a GitHub of all the laser experiments. People can leave their thing completely anonymously. You can fork other people's experiments, but that's essentially where most things live right now. And we are officially doing retreats. So if people are interested in the retreat, they can go to corretreat.com and book a call with me, and we can talk about it. There's a couple more coming up. One in June 1st till 8th, and one in December 12th till 19th.
That looks good. That's in Costa Rica, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do in these retreats? What's the purpose of them?
It's a sex cult. We have no.
I was like, did I hear this wrong?
It's like, wait, what?
No. It's just to make sure you're listening. No. It's it's essentially, people ask me to see the laser, so we created a really beautiful luxury vacation around it, and we have beautiful medicines available with top facilitators, both NN and 5-MeO, and within it we also do a lot of really fun practices. It's just a super luxury vacation in which you can see the laser with me and do a lot of fun things in the medicine space.
Amazing.
Oh. Danny, I can't say
thank you so
enough.
much.
I really, really appreciate you coming on again, and you've been very great in the past year for as long as we know you. I wish you all the best, and hopefully we're going to get you on again next year on the 18th of April.
On the 18th, we should make it a tradition.
Yeah,
We should do like Joe brings Duncan Trussell and they always dress up as something else. We should
Yeah,
do,
that
we
would
should
be
do that.
good.
let's do that next time.
Let's lead into that. Next time we'll
Let's
do
do that.
costumes.
Okay, cool.
Hopefully by then you're like, oh, I didn't even realize you also have a triangle. It's like you become the trigonometry of psychedelics.
Oh, right, it's three of us as well. So yeah, perfect.
Amazing. All right, guys. Well, it's a real pleasure. Thank you, Conrad. Thank you, Rupert. You guys are amazing.
Thank you.